Disbursement Acceleration Program, National Budget Circular Number 541, and related executive issuances unconstitutional.
Just recently, the Supreme Court has declared the controversial Disbursement Acceleration Program, or DAP, partially unconstitutional. These schemes include the withdrawal of unobligated allotments from the implementing agencies and declaring them as savings prior to the end of the fiscal year, cross-border transfers of savings, and funding of projects and programs not covered by appropriations in the General Appropriations Act.
We affirm that in implementing the DAP, the executive branch exercise good faith and due diligence.
Kung illegal ang DAP, kung merong maling ginawa, hindi naman uubra na walang mananagot para dito.
The DAP of the Aquino administration is said to be a stimulus package designed to fast-track public spending and push economic growth. DAP was first conceptualized September of 2011 and was approved by the President a month after. Such government intervention is needed because key programs and projects, most notably public infrastructure, were moving slowly. In 2011, an 83 billion peso budget for DAP was released and another 58 billion pesos in 2012. This amount was spent mainly for public works and agriculture, and in 2013, 15 billion pesos had been approved for the modernization of the Philippine National Police and for the rehabilitation of damages caused by Typhoon Pablo. But the good intent of DAP was shuttered when Senator Jingo Estrada, during his privileged speech, revealed that the stimulus package was used to bribe senators to vote in favor of the conviction of then Chief Justice Renato Corona. This pronouncement sparked protests calling for accountability of those who received DAP. Senator Miriam Santiago said that lawmakers who benefited from DAP must return the money. But Senator Trillanes said that it is only those who misused the funds should be held accountable. Militant groups even went as far as filing an impeachment complaint against President Benigno Aquino III for allegedly violating the Constitution and say that the people deserve a better explanation than mere invoking the so-called good faith.
Welcome to Opposing Views, a hard, straightforward discussion of today's most pressing issues. At least 9 petitioners challenged the legality of the Disbursement Acceleration Program, or DAP, before the Supreme Court. Now that the highest court of the land has declared DAP partially unconstitutional, some heads should roll. But the question is, whose heads? That's what we'll debate about tonight. So our question is, should all the DAP recipients be held liable? Good evening, I'm Rod Nepomuceno, and this is Opposing Views. Joining us tonight in our discussion, a former representative of the 1st District of Zambales, Mitos Magsaysay. Good evening, Mitos.
Good evening, Rod, and good evening, Senator Trillanes, and good evening to all our televiewers here on Opposing Views.
Yes, Mitos, your quick thoughts, maybe in 30 seconds, on your position on this question. Should everyone be liable?
Well, does the end justify the means? I don't think so. So once the Supreme Court has already ruled that it's unconstitutional, we already know that came from a poisonous tree, the fruit of the poisonous tree, then I think it's very imperative upon the Aquino administration to really come out and say to the Filipino people where they use the DAP funds. Now, as far as I'm concerned, wherever they spent it is already illegal. So, I think that if it is illegal, then everything that comes after it, whether it was supposedly done in good faith, already is immaterial as far as I'm concerned.
All right, thank you very much, Mitos. Now, on the opposing side is Senator Antonio Trillanes IV. Good evening, Senator.
Good evening, Rod. Good evening, Ma'am Mitos, and to all our televiewers.
Yes. Senator, your quick thoughts. Do you think that all those who received funds from the DAP should be held liable?
No. I maintain that only those who misuse the funds entrusted to them should be held liable. Now, we can determine who these people are through a special audit by the Commission on Audit.
All right. Now, okay, so we'll start off with this basic question, and I'll ask both of you. Mitos, do you think that this Disbursement Acceleration Program, as a scheme or stimulus, in your personal view, well, of course, the Supreme Court already ruled, but in your view, is it constitutional, legal in any kind of reasoning, in any aspect of reasoning? Do you think it's justifiable?
Definitely not. Kasi alam mo, the mere fact that the Supreme Court has already ruled that it's unconstitutional, and the mere fact po na binago po ng Aquino administration, especially executive branch, Abad and Pinoy, yung mga budget na pinasa po namin as congressmen and senators, I think pag ginalaw mo po yung power of the purse, o ikaw you usurp the Congress as far as disbursing funds, which we have already allocated and approved during the budget hearings, sa tingin ko po mali na yun eh. Lalo na po midstream, sabi po ni Secretary Abad, galing daw po sa savings itong DAP. Paano magiging galing po sa savings? Ang pagkaintindi ko po sa savings is that kapag meron pong sobrang pera sa latter part of the year o sa end of the year, ang isang ahensya o ang pamahalaan, yun ang tinatawag na savings. May proyekto ka, may sumobrang pera, yun ang savings. Pero ang ginawa po ni Secretary Abad, kalahati pa lang po yung taon, pinigil po niya lahat ng mga projects and programs that are supposed to be implemented for the next 6 months. Na ang nagpasa po ay Kongreso. Kami po sa Kongreso ang pwede pong mag-allocate ng pondo. Kami po sa Kongreso ang pwedeng magsabi based on dun sa sinubmit na program ng executive branch, kami po ang nag-approve dun sa mga kanilang gustong gawing proyekto for the following year. Pero ginawa po ni Secretary Abad, inaprubahan na namin, pinirmahan ni Pinoy, tapos 6 months pa lang, pipigilin mo yung proyekto at gagawa ka ng sarili mong proyekto. He usurped the power of the congressman and the senator. It's an insult to the institution of Congress.
So you think that in no level of reasoning is this justifiable?
It's not justifiable.
Okay. Now, Senator, do you agree? Do you think that in some levels, this DAP is constitutional or can be justified?
Yes, I believe so. Knowing the president is very meticulous. He's very conscious about following the Constitution. And when this was presented to him, they have a basis, which is the Administrative Code of 1987. And right there, as stated there in some of the provisions there, that the president, the executive, has the power to suspend allocations for programs. And they can also use savings on wherever it is that would be beneficial to the country. Yeah.
Pero may I just interject?
Yes, go ahead.
The savings na interpretation po ni Secretary Abad is different from the savings na sinasite po ni Senator Trillanes. Na alam na po, naman po niya bilang legislators kung anong ibig sabihin ng savings.
Okay, how do you define savings? Just for the benefit of our viewers.
Like po, ulitin ko po uli. Ang savings po ay kung sakaling nagbigay po kami ng pondo sa isang ahensya, matatapos na yung taon, may in-implement silang projects, may natirang pondo, yun po ang tinatawag na savings. Nakapagtipid ka. Pero ginawa po ni Secretary Abad, hindi pa po tapos ini-implement yung projects. 6 months pa lang into 1 year, pinigil na po niya yung lahat ng mga intended projects na inaprubahan namin sa lower house at sa Senado. At ng Pangulo, kasi pinirmahan ni Pinoy yung, yung budget na pinasa namin. The ultimate signature is the President. Pinigilan niya yun. So how can you say that that is savings? That is not anymore savings. Hinijack po niya yung pondo.
Yeah. Now,
and he's not allowed to do that.
Do you think that savings is only after the fiscal year is over, or can you already declare savings in the middle of the fiscal year?
Well, the Supreme Court has spoken that it cannot be declared as savings when you're in the middle of the year. But again, presumption of regularity and good faith, when they saw that they have projected the savings already because they suspended the spending and allocation for the certain programs. Therefore, they don't need to wait for until the end of the year to declare it as savings. That's what they did. Now, the Supreme Court said
it shouldn't be that way. Okay.
Yes.
But you can understand, I guess you can understand why the administration interpreted it a different way.
Yes.
I guess that's what you're saying, right?
Yes.
Now, kasi, like, for example, yes.
Yeah, I'd just like to add, every fiscal year, at the start pag August, usually that's when we do our budget hearings, di ba po, Senator Trillanes? Ang nagbibigay po ng gusto nilang maging projects for next year, ang nagpro-propose po niyan executive branch. Si Butch Abad mismo ang nagdadala niyan sa amin sa lower house at siya nagpe-present sa amin ng napakapakapal na mga libro. Nasasabi niya, ito po ang gusto naming mga proyekto para sa lahat ng ahensya ng pamahalaan, ito mga gusto naming projects. Iniisip ko, siguro naman pinag-aralan naman siguro ng economic managers ni Pinoy yung mga gusto nila mga i-implement na project for the following year. So, syempre, kami naman sa Kongreso at saka sa Senado, we peruse over the thousands of pages of documents na pinapresent sa amin. And based on that, kung nakita naman namin magaganda yung proyekto, talagang kailangan ng taong bayan, sinusunod naman ng Congress at Senate normally yung legislative agenda ng Pangulo when it comes to implementation of projects. So, sa amin, kung nakita namin okay, aprubahan namin yung budget. Ang hindi ko maintindihan, sila na nga ang nag-craft, sila nga ang nag-isip, sila ang nagplano kung anong ilalagay for the budget for next year. Tapos sila rin midstream ang magsasabi sa amin, sandali lang, nababagalan kami sa mga proyektong yan. Sandali lang, pipigilin namin yung mga pinopost namin mga projects sa inyo, tapos ito naman yung gusto namin i-implement. Kasi kailangan namin i-stimulate yung economy. Yung Mitos Magsaysay, hindi pinag-aralan ni Butch Abad tsaka ng economic managers, yung mga sinasubmit nila sa amin yearly.
Okay. Okay, Senator Trillanes, your
I understand where Congresswoman Mitos is coming from, but then again, it's very clear there in the administrative code that they have that power to suspend. If there's in the judgment of the president that this particular program will not be beneficial anymore to the economy or to the country, he may suspend it.
So do you think, Senator, in that case, the president can effectively veto whatever was budgeted or allotted?
Yes, technically.
In the General Appropriations Act?
Yes, technically. But again, as cited earlier, that it won't make sense because you're the ones proposing it. Tapos, ikaw rin na magsususpend. So it won't make sense. But
it's possible. You're
yes,
saying legally.
Legally, they have they're standing on solid ground.
May leeway sila. No,
But I think Pinoy and Abad misinterpreted yung administrative code. Because as far as I'm concerned, he can only suspend projects within that agency.
Right.
Pero hindi mo pwedeng ililipat yung pondo ng ahensyang to, ililipat mo at ibibigay mo siguro for political purposes. Kasi alam naman po natin na portion of that DAP or yung tinasabi natin yung forced savings ni Butch Abad, ginamit pa niya for political purposes.
Alright.
Ano naman ang benefit po sa taong bayan? Paano ba magiging economic, how can you develop economic growth sa bansa kung ginamit mo yung pondo to allegedly impeach C.J. Corona as alleged by when Senator Jinggoy Estrada did his speech, dun lumabas yung DAP issue na yan.
Okay, Mito. So, Senator, sorry, I need to interrupt. So we need to take a short break. We'll be back after a short break. Meanwhile, you can react online via Facebook at facebook.com/SolarOpposingViews or tweet your comments at opposing_views. Stay tuned. We'll be back. All right, welcome back. You're still watching Opposing Views on the Solar News Channel. We have with us Senator Antonio Trillanes IV and former Representative Mitos Magsaysay. And our debate question for tonight, should all the DAP recipients be held liable? Just before the break, Mitos was making a point that the DAP, or at least part of it, was used to fund the pork barrel or the PDAF of the senators who voted for the impeachment of Chief Justice Corona, right? Senator Trillanes, your comment on that?
Of course, that's a very malicious statement. I'm not referring only to Ms. Mitos, but to all those who were trying to pound on that particular issue. The whole country saw the impeachment trial. The former Chief Justice Renato Corona was guilty as sin, okay? And everybody saw that. So if anybody who's claiming that he was bribed, then probably he's the only one who was bribed. And if you'd look at those probably who had the tendency to acquit, probably they were the ones needed to be bribed, right? And I remember this attorney, Judd Roy, who publicly claimed that he got information that the senators were approached and dangled with 100 million pesos. Now, just looking at the data, I now know who's the source of this guy.
Who spread that rumor? Or,
Yes.
Well, okay.
The senator who got 100 million. Okay? So, unfortunately for this senator, he assumed that everybody got the same. So, he's now exposed, right? So, we better ask him, and he should be the one to be asked that why he accepted that, knowing that it was a bribe.
Senator, there were people questioning that those who voted against the impeachment, meaning who did not vote for the impeachment, they did not get their PDAF in the same year.
No, that's not accurate. That's not accurate. There were those who voted for the acquittal. They also got
their
funds
PDAF.
from the DAP.
All right.
So it's not true. But again, those senators who are claiming that these DAP funds have been dangled as bribe, they're the ones
Probably the ones who
yes.
were bribed.
Were
All right,
bribed.
let's shift gears. Let's shift gears a bit. Do you think, let's talk about the DAP in itself. Do you think the DAP served its very purpose when it was announced in 2011, when it was publicized that there would be this DAP? Do you think, and they mentioned the purpose for what it's for, do you think it eventually served its purpose, Senator?
Judging from the economists, the readings or the assessment of the economists, that the economic growth somehow was at least 7 at that time. Then even the Supreme Court acknowledged in its ruling that the DAP was beneficial to the economy. So I don't see any argument there.
Do you think, Mitos? Or you'd go back to your argument that the ends doesn't justify the means?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, how can the DAP stimulate the economy? Because I'm sure naman if Butch Abad implemented all those projects that we approved of in 2011 and 2012, I'm sure it would have spurred economic growth also. Because most of the budget that we passed also went to worthwhile projects of the administration, supposed to be, like building classrooms if it's DepEd, providing scholarships for CHED and TESTA, building infrastructure projects to connect Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao and make it more attractive to investors. So I really don't understand why Butch Abad had to stop the projects midstream. And it's very clear that you cannot just justify Pinoy changing or putting the money elsewhere. The point is, he was even cited the Supreme Court cited the unprogrammed funds, that they have a wrong interpretation of unprogrammed funds, because unprogrammed funds are funds that you can spend or on in cases of emergency, if only those funds came from excess of revenue.
Yes.
Kasi for a fiscal year, the government is supposed to earn a certain revenue. And if the target is exceeded, then that is what you call unprogrammed funds.
Right.
And that's the only time that the president can allocate money to certain projects. But definitely in those years, 2011 and 2012, they were not able to prove in the Supreme Court that the budget year, the fiscal year, that the government exceeded their target as far as revenues are concerned.
Okay, Mitos, let me ask you, and then I'll ask Senator. What will happen now to the DAP beneficiaries? I mean, we had DAP allocation for UP, for example, for the building and renovation of campuses, construction of the statistics building, Los Baños Learning Center, for example, the 2-story building in Mindanao, the purchase of the MRI CT scan in UP Manila. These were all, you can trace it, and these were all from the DAP fund. So what do we do with that?
May I ask the economic managers of Pinoy, why not in foresight or hindsight? Did you not put those in the budget cover when you submit your budget proposals to us every year? If you knew that these projects would be worthwhile projects, then you should have put those in the budget of the DOH.
Correct. But now that they're already there,
But as far as I'm concerned,
how do we undo that?
That's the problem. These fruits now come from an illegal source. And I cannot, should we just say, wag na lang, kalimutan natin, napunta sa mabuting bagay kasi it was done in good faith? Kung ganyan ang gagawin natin, Rod, we'll have chaos in the country. Nobody will follow the Constitution anymore.
But from a practical standpoint, how do you undo those things?
Well, first of all, let the courts decide, how it's going to be done. This is a first case, probably in the history of the Philippines and probably some countries, that the sitting administration would do such a thing.
Now, Senator, in your mind, what do we do with this project?
Okay, unfortunately for the critics of DAP, the answer to that question is stated in the Supreme Court ruling, that this ruling is prospective in nature, and those past actions cannot be undone. And in fact, it was acknowledged that it was beneficial. So all those beneficiaries cannot be held liable, and there is a presumption of good faith unless it was proven later on that there are some anomalies in those projects.
No, as far as I'm concerned, we all should go to the root cause. Do we believe that Pinoy and Butch Abad did they violate the Constitution? I want to ask Senator Trillanes, does he think that they violated the Constitution?
Now, having heard the Supreme Court ruling, we can say yes. But back then, you can say that they actually believed.
Could have been argued.
Yes, they actually believed that they're following the Constitution. So you'll have to establish willful intent to violate the Constitution. And it's similar to the PDAF ruling. The PDAF ruling is also perspective. When the PDAF was declared by the Supreme Court as unconstitutional, did we call for the resignation of anybody or impeachment of anybody? No. We just accepted it, that what we've been doing in the past is unconstitutional, so we cannot do that again. So I believe we should treat the DAP the same way.
Okay. I just like to say something, because he said parang it was done in good faith. May I just, and parang you make it appear as if Pinoy and Butch Abad were so innocent as far as implementing the DAP, that they did not know that it will be unconstitutional. But mind you, everybody knows, it's out already, that when Pinoy was a senator, he filed a bill in the Senate, specifically that curtailing the freedom of the president to realign funds, because it was explained to him. Even Leonor Briones, our national treasurer, also explained. She said it in media that when Pino was a senator, they briefed him about how to realign funds and kung ano yung bawal, ano yung hindi. So he perfectly knew kung anong bawal at hindi.
Okay.
I would assume, he was a 9-year congressman, he's a senator before becoming president, so he knows the legalities of things. And I know that Butch Abad, I cannot underestimate Butch Abad. He's a lawyer. And as a lawyer, you know the Constitution. So as far as I'm concerned, I cannot in my mind fathom that they're innocent. They knew what was going on. And if it was really done in good faith, why did Butch Abad not include the legal advisors of Pinoy and even the executive secretary, as claimed by Paquito Ochoa, that they were out of the loop as far as the DAP was concerned, if it was done in good faith and if it was above board. Because if I were in Malacanang, I would always want to cover my back. And if I'm not a lawyer, if I'm a president, I'm not a lawyer, I will ask my legal advisors and I'll ask legal opinion as far as all the decisions that I have to make of how it will affect the nation, or will it affect my position as president.
Yeah. No,
but that's not what they did. They went through the back door. Yeah. And that is what Butch Abad and Pinoy have to explain.
Okay. Now, speaking of good faith, and I'll ask the Senator. Senator, you admitted in some interview that you didn't know that you were actually spending DAP funds.
Yes.
As far as you were concerned, you were just given your PDAF, but you did not know that this came from the DAP, I guess, the DAP fund. No? How can you assure, for example, the Filipino people, that you spent it to the appropriate, I guess, beneficiary, or you provided it to the right beneficiary, and where it was supposed to go?
So I showed already publicly the documents. The transmittal letter that I gave to the Senate Finance Committee chairman then was very specific, that the list of projects should be charged under PDAF. So there's no ambiguity there. As far as my office was concerned, we're charging it under PDAF. Now, along with that was a list of projects, 50 projects totaling 50 million. And we have checked it with the DPWH regarding their status, and almost all of them have been completed except for those who have been suspended by the decision of the Supreme Court regarding PDAF. So, in fact, it was suspended when the ruling of PDAF was made by the Supreme Court. So, in fact, it affirms our position that even as far as the PWH is concerned, they treated that as PDAF.
Okay. Now, Mitos, I guess the question that we're going through here is that was there good faith? Was there good faith? Can I ask you, at least as you read the administrative code, do you think that by reading it, and I have read it, I have read the provision, and it does say that the president has the power to suspend and reallocate, and perhaps it's differently worded from the Constitution.
Yes.
Do you think that any reasonable mind can say, yeah, no, I can do this. I can do this according to administrative code? In other words, you can justify what they did based on the administrative code as you read it.
Okay,
Literally.
I am not a lawyer, but as far as I'm concerned, anything can any AO, I'm not a lawyer, cannot supersede the Constitution.
Okay.
The buck stops with the Constitution. So if there's anything that goes against the Constitution, even a comma or a phrase, as far as I'm concerned, ang dapat pakinggan natin yung Constitution.
But considering there's
Kasi
a
yun
law,
ang Biblia natin
considering the administrative code is also a law, and the one who should interpret whether it's violating the Constitution is the Supreme Court, you think that the executive can justify it?
As far as I'm concerned, the Supreme Court is the only interpreter of the law, and
Yes.
not the executive branch, not Pinoy, not Butch Abad. It's the Supreme Court.
Correct.
So,
Okay, Senator, I'll allow you to interject, and but we'll need to take a short break
Okay,
after this.
my take is this. Let's remember that PDAF before was ruled twice as constitutional by the same Supreme Court that we have. So on the third time, on the third try, because there was this there's clamor to scrap the pork barrel, they suddenly changed. So I wouldn't be surprised that 5 years, 10 years from now, under a different composition of the Supreme Court, they would rule DAP as constitutional. So I'm not worried because they're talking about legal technicalities that can be interpreted either way. You know how lawyers are, Attorney Rod.
Yes, I know them very well. All right, we need to take a short break. Don't go away. When we come back, the result of our online poll on the issue and the final words of our guests. Stay tuned. You're watching Opposing Views.
Kinasuhan na yung involved sa PDAP, dapat yung involved din sa DAP, ganun din.
Kahit sila ay senador, kung talagang may nagawa silang mali, dapat ho talagang kasuhan at ikulong.
Kung yung mga maliliit na sila na paghinailang magnanakaw, kinukulong sila pa nang binibigyan ng VIP treatment, malaking kalokohan yan.
Pag walang kasalanan, hindi makakasuhan. Pag may kasalanan, dapat kasuhan.
Kung mapapatunayan, dapat na po ikulong sila dahil sa nangurap sila sa atin. Imbis ibigay sa mahihirap, napunta sa kanila, kaya kailangan ikulong sila.
Dapat din managot sila. Dahil sila lang nagpapayaman, yung pera ng taong bayan yan eh.
Welcome back. You're still watching Opposing Views on the Solar News Channel. I'm Rod Nepomuceno, and still with us, Senator Antonio Trillanes IV, and former representative of the 1st District of Zambales, Mitos Magsaysay. And our question, should all the DAP recipients be held liable? Now, Mitos, wasn't there a DAP-like mechanism in PGMA's term? She called it overall savings, according to Abad.
but as far as I remember, it was not like the DAP. Because during Arroyo's time, she never stopped
in the middle
projects in the middle and called it savings. If ever there were savings during her administration, it was because, the honest to goodness sake, because if ever she violated the Constitution, I'm sure somebody would have filed cases against her for violating the Constitution.
Yeah, but just to play devil's advocate here, for example, if you're starting the year, January, and then January to March, you were supposed to fill a position, and you didn't fill that position. So automatically, from January to March, there was already saving on that particular head, that particular position. And let's say in January to March, there was supposed to be construction to be done, let's say to pave a road, and then after that, you knew there were savings already there. Don't you, I mean, just to argue the point, don't you already know that for that particular project, there was already savings, therefore you don't have to wait till the end of the year? That's why they say you can use your savings within your own agency. Meaning, if you have savings within, if that's, let's say, if it's in the DAP ed, if it's a teaching position that you didn't fill out, then you can get hire additional teachers using that savings. But what they did kasi under the Pinoy administration, yung savings ng DAP ed, nilipat nila sa ibang proyekto in another agency. Ginamit nila yung pondo for another purpose. Okay. So that is why it became. That's where they violated as far as the Supreme Court's concerned. Kasi hindi, yung savings within the same agency, pwede yun. Pero yung cross-border, yung ililipat mo, yung from my agency, ililipat ko sa'yo, that's another story.
Do you think, Senator, may justification yung cross-border and the transfer?
Yes, I believe the cross-border term was referred or is referring to outside the different branches of the specific branch of government. But if, for example, the savings is for DAP ed, the president can use it for another agency within the executive branch. Okay, so they can do that. It's also very clear in the administrative code. Now,
so it's not necessarily a savings for a road. It doesn't have to be allotted for
another road. Yes, you can do. Okay, you can do it
as long as it's under the executive. All right.
Now, I'll just go back earlier regarding the time of Arroyo. They actually did worse. Because what they did was they deliberately reenacted the budget so that the whole thing
was the same.
Is practically unprogrammed funds. So they can use everything to wherever they choose.
Okay. That is the fault of the senators and the congressmen. That's why we went on a reenacted budget. But this one is
all unprogrammed.
Yeah, it's all unprogrammed. But this one is different. We programmed it, we passed it, the president approved it, and then in midstream, they stopped it. Now, you were asking earlier who should be liable, and do you think that whose head should roll? I remember recently si Cadet Cudya, PMA, you're a military man. Wasn't he dismissed from the honor roll and the ranks of the PMA simply because he was late for 2 minutes and he lied? Imagine, ang kasalanan lang niya na late ng 2 minutes, tapos no, nagsinungaling daw siya, tinanggal na siya. Ano bang violate niya? I think it's the honor code. Yeah. Kayo ho, Senator Trillanes, nung panahon po nung nakarang administrasyon, nagkaroon kayo ng Oakwood Mutiny, nagkaroon po kayo ng Peninsula Siege. Sa mata po nyo, I'm putting myself in your shoes. Sa mata ninyo, sa tingin nyo tama yung ginagawa ko. Kasi sa tingin ko, merong mga hindi magagandang nangyayari sa bansa natin ang administrasyon. And para sa akin, tama yun. Pero ba't nung bandang huli, nakulong ka? Kasi ang sinabi nila, na inadmit mo naman kay Karen Davila, kasi alam ko may ginawa akong kasalanan, kaya pinagbayaran ko, nakulong ako. Ito din sa issue ng DAP. Ano ho bang kasalanan nyo? Security threat lang po kayo, Senator Trillanes. Wala naman kayo violate na ng Constitution. Pero naging security threat kayo. Kasi you destroyed life and property. Alam mo yung mga ganun, property, wala naman life na namatay. Pero dito ho sa issue ng DAP, ano ang na-violate dito? Ang Constitution ang violate ni Abad tsaka ni Pinoy. So, mas malala po yung ginawa nila. Bakit natin papabayaan na lang that they go scot-free? Nag-resign si Butch Abad. The latest, he filed his resignation. Pero hindi naman tinanggap ni Pinoy. So what does that say? Okay.
So you're saying, of course, Secretary Butch Abad and Pinoy
they should be held liable
right.
Because they're the ones who implemented this DAP. And Pinoy even went to the extent and said, I will take responsibility for everything.
Okay. Senator?
Again, I would disagree because having Supreme Court rulings declaring executive action or legislative action as unconstitutional doesn't mean that there is a criminal offense already. And I think what we're looking for is this. If we want the head of the President or Secretary Butch Abad, for what? What is the crime that we're charging them with? For example, if they're saying nangurakot, o sige, how much Nobody can
They're
even
saying,
say.
Senator, technical malversation because you're not supposed to be
Okay.
moving one item of a budget to another.
Okay. One element there in technical malversation is the element of deception. Was there any intent to deceive? Wherein, for example, they declared this as such when in fact it's a different thing. Everything was declared as it is. There was no attempt to hide anything, but the process was the one that was declared unconstitutional.
At least on your end, Senator, you think that there's enough transparency on the part of the administration? There's enough transparency insofar as how the DAP was?
No. I'll admit to that we have yet to see where all the DAP funds went, really. As far as I was concerned, the 50 million that they gave from DAP, I already showed it to the public where it went, and they can check it out.
So sorry, Senator, how do we know that there's no technical malversation if there's been no, I guess, transparency in presenting how it's been
we're talking about the process. As far as the process is concerned, there is no technical malversation. Now, another element for technical malversation is you did this so you can benefit from it. Now, that's where the critics of the DAP are having difficulty with, because they cannot show anything that all these transfers of funds or savings ended up with either the President or Secretary Butchabad. So now we can find out really who pocketed funds through a special audit by the Commission on Audit.
But as far as I'll go back to my main premise, does the end justify the means? Because as far as I'm concerned, when you say that the President did not violate or Butchabad did not violate, the mere fact that the Supreme Court has already spoken that the Constitution itself was violated.
But after the fact, that was after the fact.
But still,
but
the ruling stays, because when it was found out, you're saying that the process was done properly. It was the process that was at fault. It's a process that is questionable.
But because the Supreme Court did say that if there, appropriate action should be filed for them to be held liable. So I guess the Supreme Court didn't say they were liable. It just opened the door.
Yeah, but the mere fact that the Supreme Court said that there were certain issues that were unconstitutional, and that is what Butchabad did, then somebody has to pay.
Okay, I'll go back to the previous ruling about the PDAF. When PDAF was declared unconstitutional last year by the Supreme Court, did we ask for the resignation of all the legislators who were dispensing the PDAF, or even the President and Secretary Butchabad, who were part of that, actually, the executive and legislative? No, we did not. So it's the same thing, because the ruling is prospective. If Secretary Butchabad and the President will continue to implement DAP despite this ruling, then we can
But then the Supreme Court also said that the burden of proof of good faith now lies in their hands. They have to prove that it was done in good faith.
Yes,
but the mere fact that Secretary Abad, you said everything was above board, na parang wala silang tinago. The mere fact na hindi niya dinaan sa legal channels ng Malacanang, sa normal procedure sa Malacanang, dadaan sa office ni Executive Secretary Ochoa, titingnan niya ng mga legal advisors ni Pinoy, tapos pupunta sa desk ni Pinoy. The mere fact that it was just an exchange between Pinoy and Abad, and everybody were out of the loop. Even Secretary Ochoa said, wala akong kaalam-alam dyan. Even the legal advisors of Pinoy said, wala rin kaming kaalam-alam dyan. Eh kung talagang above board yan at done in good faith, ba't mo itatago? Ba't hindi mo labas in the open? Why so much secrecy as far as implementing, disbursing these funds are concerned, if it is above board?
Well, I think that he was very open. In fact, it was Secretary Butchabad who announced this DAP thing last year. Nobody knew about it, but he declared it. They have this disbursement acceleration program, which was adopted by the President. Now, I would like to believe that while it may have been conceptualized by Secretary Butchabad, but the President have adopted it. He has adopted it, and therefore, the buck stops with him. He cannot pass it down to Secretary Butchabad. And the critics now cannot point at him because it became the program of the President once he signed that memo.
And that is why, Senator Trillanes, there are groups who want Pinoy impeached. Because you're correct. Butchabad conceptualized it, but Pinoy adopted it. And and that is why he now has impeachment cases that want to be filed when Congress resumes. Because as far as the Filipino people are concerned, they have done something wrong, and that's why he's going to be possibly impeached. But we know the nuances of impeachment. It's a political process.
Yes.
So as far as I'm concerned, Butchabad knew what he wanted. He even testified naman in the Supreme Court eh. Hindi naman ako lang naman ang nag-isip, pero si Pinoy naman ang nag-implement.
Yeah.
And even the DBM director said that none of those funds will be released without the signature of Pinoy.
Okay. But
so,
Senator,
I'll allow you to again make a rejoinder and then we'll take a short break.
It boils down to this. Nagnakaw ba si Presidente Aquino and si Secretary Butchabad? Magkano ninakaw nila? Even the harshest critics of DAP won't answer, cannot answer. In fact, they'll say, no, but technically, they transferred this. It won't wash. Sa Filipino people, ang mata nila, tinitignan nila, nagnakaw ba yung aming Presidente? Pag nasabi yan ng mga critics ng DAP, then, by all means.
Bakit Senator Trillanes? Bakit Senator Trillanes, ang pag-govern ba ng isang bansa, nakatuon lang sa korupsyon, sa pagnanakaw? When you govern a country, it's not only corruption that you're looking at, you're also looking at proper governance of the leaders of this country.
Mitos, thank you. I need to interrupt you at this point. We are taking a short break. Don't go away. When we come back, the result of our online poll on the issue and the final words of our guests. Stay tuned. You're watching Opposing Views. Welcome back. This is Opposing Views. I'm Rodney Pumaceno. Our guest, Senator Antonio Trillanes IV and former Representative Mitos Magsaysay. And our debate question for tonight, should all the DAP recipients be held liable? Okay, we were talking about the liability of, supposed liability of President Aquino and perhaps Secretary Butchabad. Now let's focus on the recipients. Senator, I'll throw it to you first because you obviously received from the DAP. Do you think that all the recipients, kasi as mentioned by Senator Santiago, the DAP must be returned because to her it's stolen money?
I believe when Senator Miriam Defensor Santiago made that statement, she has yet to read the Supreme Court ruling, because it's stated there in the Supreme Court ruling that those that have been done already, or the past acts, cannot be undone. Okay? So the beneficiaries there is presumption of good faith unless it would be found out through an audit by COA and other investigation agencies that there are some anomalies or it ended up into somebody's pocket. So that's the ruling by the Supreme Court.
Okay. Mitos, do you think that everyone, including possibly Senator Trillanes, who received some portions of the DAP, should be held liable?
Well, for one, we need to have an investigation, an independent body, because there's so many allegations as far as the DAP. It's so funny. Malacanang said, 91% of the DAP was implemented properly, but the 9%, the one that we gave to the legislators, we're not sure. Make them answer and say where they put their money. So parang they put a cloud of doubt pa on the legislators. See? Now, so ang tanong ko dito, because during the CJ impeachment, there were so many allegations that allegedly senators and congressmen were bribed to vote in favor of what Malacanang wanted, and which was to impeach CJ Corona. To the point that the figures came out, and some of my ex-colleagues, because I'm not a legislator anymore, even said that some of us binigyan na lang kami ng pera galing sa National Dairy Corporation. Wala namang baka doon sa distrito ko. And nung sinabi ko walang baka, ang binigay, pera. So what I'm trying to say is, bakit?
Okay. A lot of the questions arising from you mentioned earlier, diba? The president can reallocate. Not necessarily, if it's savings for road construction, that savings doesn't have to be used for another road construction. But we didn't get to touch on yung cross-border, like from one branch to another, and the questions that being raised by most people, in social media especially, is that why was there a transfer of DAP funds to the legislature, the senators?
I would like to correct that impression. There was no transfer of funds because we were just asked to identify projects. The funds remained at
in the executive?
With the executive. So we just gave the list of identified projects.
So PDAF is under the executive?
Yes.
Is PDAF under the General Appropriations
Yes,
Act?
it is.
Under the executive.
It is.
Okay.
So we just identified. The funds were never transferred to the Senate. So there was never any cross-border transfer with the Senate and the executive.
But some of the constitutional bodies were also given funds coming from the DAP, like the Intelligence Fund of the COMELEC.
Supreme Court, I think, as well?
The Supreme Court, the COA were also given DAP funds. And that was admitted naman by the chairman of COA and the chairman of COMELEC. So as far as I'm concerned, ang question lang naman dito si Kudya, dinismiss just for being late 2 minutes and telling a lie. Ang grabe ng magnitude ng punishment niya. Nag-aral yung bata ng 4 years, top of his class, tapos gumastos ang gobyerno para sa education niya, tapos dahil doon lamang tatanggalin mo.
Those are apples and oranges.
But still, the point is here is liability.
Yes,
when you do something wrong and you violate a law, whether it's a small law, a tradition, a security law, or yung corruption issue, pero when you violate the Constitution, ang issue na dito, kahit na sabihin ho sa akin, Senator Trillanes, na prospective tayo, hindi pwedeng retroactive. Ang tanong dito, mayroon pa ba tayong dapat pa bang pagtiwalaan si Butch Abad at saka si Pinoy, knowing na they entered this DAP with eyes wide open. Alam nila ang implications nito. Alam nila na this is unconstitutional. Yet they went ahead with it and tried to fool the Filipino people by saying na it was done naman in good faith. Kung good faith ang isa-cite natin, lahat na lang ng mga magnanakaw dito sa bansa, sasabihin na lang nila sa atin, ako, nagnakaw ako kasi yung anak ko, papakainin ko yung 5 anak ko sa bahay.
Yeah, we'll allow the Senator to interject.
I again would beg to disagree. Because when the executive branch was implementing DAP, it was yet to be ruled as unconstitutional. They actually believed that it was constitutional, and they based it in the administrative code. It was a law. They were following a law. It's not as if they totally disregard all the laws of the Constitution and went ahead and acted like Robin Hood. But that's not the case. And they have legal basis when they started it. And again, go back to the so-called infallibility of the Supreme Court. Twice, they ruled PDAF as constitutional. On the third time, they ruled it as unconstitutional. Now, under a different composition, again, of the Supreme Court, I believe this can go either way again. So, we're not talking about an act that is intrinsically evil or immoral or illegal, but we're talking about processes and technicalities, and the public won't have traction to the public.
How about those allotments to the Commission on Audit Buildings, the Supreme Court? There were some allotments to the construction, di ba? Mga infrastructure projects of those.
Okay. So it was ruled now as unconstitutional, the so-called cross-border transfers.
Yeah.
But again, if you're looking at the administrative code, the president can augment any part of the budget, and he can utilize the savings as he desires.
But you know, there are also certain conditions that you have to meet before you can transfer funds and you can utilize funds. I mean, if that happened, Senator Trillanes, di sana ginawa na yan nung panahon pa ni Cory, ni Ramos, ni ERAP, ni GMA, until kay Pinoy. Kung pwede pala yung iniisip po ninyo. Pero ang point po dito, kahit sa decision na pinenong some of the justices, sinabi nga ng isang justice, ikaw, Secretary Abad, 9 years kang abogado ka, 9 years kang congressman. Hindi ako naniniwalang hindi mo alam kung anong nakasaad sa Constitution. Alam kong alam mo yan. Yung nagdududa yung judge, hindi niya alam yung, you cannot feign innocence to me. Parang ganun yung sinulat, yung linya . So para sa akin, and Pinoy knows that also, kasi nung senador siya, briefing naman siya tungkol dyan . Kaya nga may batas siya, may bill siyang final sa Senate dahil at that time, ayaw niya si GMA mag-realign ng funds at mag-impound ng mga pera ng taong bayan. Ako na lang tanong kay Senator Trillanes, you're a senator. Who knows, one day you might be the president of this country. Would you do? And would you do exactly what Pinoy and Abad did?
If I would be facing this in a similar situation, and I would be presented with such an idea, and the bottom line here is it would help me fulfill my mandate as president of the country, I would do it.
Do you think the DAP, in and by itself, just the principle of it, has helped fast-track a lot of projects?
Yes.
And thus spur the economy?
Yes,
but I don't know
and
how...
even the Supreme Court agreed to that. It's in the ruling.
But then, you know, Senator, it's in the Constitution, three separate bodies. It's the legislative branch who crafts laws, amend laws, repeals laws. It's the judiciary who interprets the law. And it's the executive branch who implements the law. Papayag ka ba? Pareho tayong legislator dito. Papayag ka ba na i-usurp ng executive branch yung power ng Congress over the purse? Will you allow an institution like the executive branch do and supersede yung mga ginagawa na tayo lang ang pinapayagan ng saligang batas na gumawa noon?
Yes, I agree. In hindsight, yes. We're in agreement that it shouldn't be done anymore. But we're talking about that particular...
You're talking about in the past,
yes, in the past.
It could have been interpreted either way. It could have been interpreted either way.
Then, Senator Trillanes, if you're talking about the past, kung papatawarin natin yung mga gumawa ng DAP, mga authors ng DAP, patawarin na rin po natin lahat ng gumawa ng kasalanan na nililitis nyo ngayon dyan. Yung mga kasamahan mo...
There's a big difference because, you know, I'm asking earlier, ano yung nagnakaw ba si Presidente Aquino and si Secretary Butchabat? Wala, even the harshest critics. Again, tatanungin mo sila, hindi.
Pero Senator...
Yun naman pala eh. Then we're talking about processes dito.
No, Senator
so,
Trillanes...
that's a totally different thing. Iba yung nagmandarambong at iba yung nagkamali sa proseso. Pero hindi binigay pa rin naman niya sa tao.
Senator Trillanes, bakit ang batsihan ba ng good governance yung nagnakaw ka? Good governance is how you lead the nation and following the Constitution, following the law. Yan ang basic na tinuturo natin sa tao. You have to follow the Constitution as elected officials and even appointed officials from barangay captain up to the president. Pag sineswear into office kami, meron po kami sinusumpaan. Oath of office to the Constitution. Kami po ay susunod sa saligang batas at sa lahat po ng tenets yan. We will follow the Constitution, obey the laws, etc., etc. What is the point of that? If we legislators will allow another branch of government or anyone for that matter, maybe you, maybe me, if we violate the law, then we should pay for it.
Mitos, just to be curious, no?
Kaya ka nga po nag-Oakwood Mutiny at saka nag-Peninsula Siege kasi sa mata mo, meron pong pagkakamaling nangyari no, na gusto mong itama at gusto mong ipahiwatig sa taong bayan.
Mitos, you were mentioning earlier about the executive's role, no, and the judiciary's role. The judiciary's role is to interpret the laws, and of course the executive is to implement the laws.
Yes.
No? Now, don't you think, and this is just a curiosity, no? Don't you think that when the government, when the administration, for example, is implementing the law, they have to read the law and kind of interpret it first, so that they'll know, okay, this is how we interpret this, so that we can implement it this way. So to some extent, there has to be some kind of, I guess, evaluation or interpretation before they implement.
And that is why all presidents have their own legal advisors who looks at each and every document that enters the president's chambers. And that is why I'm wondering, how come, as far as the DAP is concerned, dinaan ni Butchabat through the back door? Na inamin po mismo ni Ed de Mesa ba yun? I think he was a legal advisor at that time, 2011, 2012, and even Paquito Ochoa said, hindi dumaan sa amin.
But Senator, you said the President approved it, right?
Yes,
yes.
But ito, no,
but he did not consult.
Ni yung Arroyo regime, ano? Remember yung EO 464, yung 1017, ito talagang mga blatant misinterpretations of the Constitution which were declared as unconstitutional, pero ganun talaga yun, parang prospective ang application niya palagi. Suddenly ngayon, parang ano tayo, parang we're making a mountain out of a molehill.
Sorry to cut you off, Senator, and sorry to cut you off, Mitos. Unfortunately, my producers are telling me time, so maybe we can try a part two, no?
Yes.
But we'd like to thank you. Right now, at this point of the show, we'd like to give you a final minute or the final 30 seconds, if you will, to expound your position. Again, the question is, should all those who received from the DAP be held liable? Mitos, you first.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, if it came from a poisonous tree, and then there should be an investigation, then that investigation will be able to determine who should be liable. All
right. Senator Trillanes?
Sa akin, let's follow the money trail. If it leads to somebody's pockets, then by all means, we prosecute the guy.
At least we're in agreement that there should be some kind of investigation.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Thanks to our guests, Senator Antonio Trillanes IV and former Representative Mitos Magsaysay. Now let's feel the pulse of our viewers through our online poll. Our question, should all the DAP recipients be held liable? Those who answered yes, 70%, and those who answered no, 30%. And that's our opposing views for tonight. Tune in again next week for another bold and engaging discussion on today's most relevant issues. I'm Rodney Pumaseno. Good night and God bless.